Do you agree with Jose's sentiments that they don't get the credit they deserve?
100%. You know, people look at Mourinho and say, well, he's a more defensive-minded manager. It's only Manchester City that have scored more goals than them in the Premier League. Lukaku, joint second top goal scorer in the Premier League. And it's what Mourinho has. He has substance and style. I remember when he was at Chelsea a few years ago, they were level on points, level on goals, scored goals, conceded everything with Manchester City. It's all about style. And then it went to substance, and Chelsea ended up walking the league. And I think
substance got them over the line. Is that what you're saying?
Substance got them over the line. So it's getting the blend of it. It's getting the mix of it. And I just think that if you look at the Premier League, go back a few years, and there's probably 2 teams that could win it in any particular season, 3 at the most. Now at the start of every season, you're probably looking at it and going, 6 teams could win this. And people are actually now saying teams that have lost 3 games, they can't win the Premier League. And we've only just hit November. So Mourinho is a manager that looks at the opposition. I think he pays them the utmost respect. I think if he plays against the top 6, he'll probably go... He's happy to get a draw with them away from home and then beat them at home. OK, they had the poor result against Huddersfield, but went to Liverpool, got the draw. At home against Tottenham, won. Didn't concede in either of them games. So I think it's wrong that he is getting the criticism that he gets. And I don't know... I think there's a lot of snobbery in football. I think there's a lot of snobbery in football when... Most importantly, it's about the results. Get the results, win the games, that's when you win the trophies.
Do you think, Paul, is part of this for effect? Does Jose Mourinho genuinely care about what the media says, what perhaps... I mean, there's elements of the fans wanting to talk to him to address, as he's addressing the atmosphere at Old Trafford. He's a serial winner of trophies. He wins wherever he goes, isn't he? Is this part of him playing almost the bad guy in the media to try and protect his players? Yes, we've won this, I've got the stats to back it up. And as Danny says, it's substance over style.
No, I think he's just answering the question. I mean, there was sort of unhappy, you know, unrest when they beat Tottenham. I mean, they've just beat a team who's gone to Real Madrid, drew, won all their Premier League away games, and they beat them 1-0, and there's like unrest. I mean, he's just answering the question. He would rather... I bet he can't believe it. I mean, you take away the Huddersfield game, and I think they've been outstanding. Outstanding. All right, at the start, I said at the start of the season, they haven't played anybody yet, and then they went to Liverpool and parked the bus, but they still put them teams away, and that's what you've got to do. And Man United have pure pressure on them week in, week out. This is Man United. They have to win. They have to perform. But he won't, deep down, he won't be happy. He won't be happy with the fans. He won't be happy with the fans doubting him and the fans being a bit of unrest. You know, he does what he does best.
Well, after 10 games, but the best stats the Premier League, their Premier League challenge in 5 years is... When we look at Manchester United and people talk about the Manchester United way, is that something that romantically the supporters still have in their hearts, whereas he's saying, sorry, this is the new version of Manchester United, this is the reality that you have to deal with as a Man United fan?
Yeah, of course, definitely. I agree with you 100%. I mean, you know, they haven't got Ronaldo, they haven't got Giggs, they haven't got Cole, York, Sheringham, Keane, Scholes. They haven't got them players anymore. You know, they haven't, and they played a certain way, and you know, and that was that era. You know, when they employed Mourinho, Man United, they employed him for what they're doing now. The people upstairs, they didn't call him in to say, right, I want you to play the Sir Alex Ferguson way. You need to win 4 and 5-0 every week. You know, but he'll come and do it his way. If he was at Arsenal, they'd win the league. I think. Because he sets up, he makes sure you're hard to beat first, and then he will go from there. Don't lose, and then we'll go and win after that. You know, he probably had a fine plan of, let's not get beat by the big teams. We'll not wipe the floor, but we'll comfortably beat the lesser teams. We won't be far off here. As soon as they got beat by Huddersfield, they're behind the 8 ball now, and now the pressure's on. Come what Sunday when they play Chelsea, if Man City have already beat Arsenal, it's 8 points, and they're running out at Stamford Bridge.
I think the interesting thing is, as well, and Paul's just touching it, when you talk about the Manchester United way, you can say that about a lot of clubs. There can't be a Manchester United way now. No. You look at...
Is that because of personnel or the manager?
No, it's the way that football's evolved now. So if we look at Manchester United through the 90s, when, you know, that's when people are talking about the Manchester United way. It was get the ball in the midfield, get it out to the wingers, you get crossed into the box, the likes of Cole, York, Sheringham, Solskjaer, and then even a little bit further on, the likes of Van Nistelrooy. Wingers, I probably can't name 5 natural wingers within the Premier League now. The wingers are actually your fullbacks. Your old school wingers are now inverted wingers that want to go inside. So therefore, straight away, that's finished. Teams don't play with 2 centre forwards. So I think a lot of the time when people talk about the whatever club it is way, that changes as football evolves. Now, Manchester United, as far as I'm concerned, the Manchester United way is winning. And that's what...
Purely winning, nothing to do with the style, nothing to do with the way that they win, just win it.
Listen, if you can add the style, then it's fantastic. But everybody goes on about, well, you know, Manchester United, they just about got that victory. They scored in the last few minutes.
But they got the victory, they scored, yeah.
They scored. Now, we go back to Sir Alex Ferguson, the greatest manager that Manchester United's ever had, probably one of the greatest that the world has ever had. Fergie time. That was when they went on and won games. Teams held on, Manchester United kept going, and it could be a substitute. Substitutes have had a massive impact for Manchester United this season, scoring late on in games. So there's a similarities there, but it's in terms of the way you're playing the game. Very few teams now play 4-4-2. It's one centre forward, your full-backs are given the width.
Why is that?
I just think it's the way that football's gone. I personally still think 4-4-2, if it's played correctly, is still the best system around. But it's the way that football's changed. That's why full-backs are going for £50 million plus now, because they're expected to be not just full-backs, but they're actually expected to be the wingers because of their only true width in the team. So therefore, Manchester United 2v1s down the side, the full-backs and the wingers getting at the opposition full-back, and then one midfielder getting forward to go and join up with two centre-forwards. Doesn't really exist anymore because, like I say, football's changed and everything changes with it.
Well, Paul, from your point of view, you mentioned that golden era of Manchester United, late 90s, turn of the century. When you hear what Danny's saying and perhaps the football evolving in that type of way, does that fit? As it needlessly evolves is perhaps what we're looking at for football. We look 4-2-3-1, we look at different team shapes.
Yeah.
Yet 4-4-2 is seen as unfashionable, but that won trophies year on year.
Well, 4-4-2 won it for Leicester.
Yeah.
You know, and if you went through the leagues that year, I think whoever played, I think the Championship team won it. I think the League One won it, and the team in League Two went up playing 4. Everybody knows the way they're playing. Sometimes I watch games and people are playing 3 and they're playing 2 and then 1, and half the players, when you're watching from up above, they don't know where they're going. They don't. They've dropped back into space. And, you know, sometimes I watch it with Arsenal. It's a complicated game, this. Well, it's a simple game made complicated. And I just think sometimes you can go 2 up front. I don't think it hurts to go 2 up front sometimes. Went back to the Euros, 2 years ago. You know, Italy well beat Spain. They played 2 up front. You know, Ramos and Pep, they never play. They don't play against 2 up front. They didn't have a clue what was going on. They usually sit there with 1 up front and they look around and they pick it. There was 2 up front and they didn't know what day it was. And sometimes you've got to do that. But I think at the moment with Man United, I just can't believe what they're going on about. I mean, it's only because their next door neighbours are, you know, doing what they're doing. But take away the Huddersfield result, I just don't see anything wrong at the moment. I really don't. Pogba's missing, big miss. He was playing so well. You know, Mkhitaryan's sort of gone off the boil since Pogba's been out because, you know, they had that understanding. And, you know, and Lukaku, I feel sorry for Lukaku. You know, we always say, oh, he don't score against the big boys, you know, he don't. Then all of a sudden he's come to the big boys, and every time they played against the big boys, he's been up front on his own, 20 yards from no one.
But not scoring in 6, is that something they should be alarmed about?
Yeah, I do there. I mean, at Man United, I think, that's a lot of game 6. That's a lot of game 6.
Jose's actually used the word untouchable. Does that come back and bite him if he goes to 10 games without scoring a goal?
If Ibrahimovic was there, he wouldn't be untouchable. If Ibrahimovic was there now, it'd be very interesting because the crowd would be roaring for Ibrahimovic, and that would put pressure on Mourinho. And I think Lukaku might go in his shell because it looks to me Lukaku's one of them confidence players. I think you've got to put your arm around him. I don't think you want to keep on having a go at him. I think, and that's what I think Mourinho's saying. You're untouchable, son. Just go out and play, and the goals will come.
That shadow of Zlatan's looming large. It's getting closer, isn't it?
Of course, yeah, 2 very different players as well, so it gives you different options. But what I would say, and Paul touched on it there, Paul Pogba being a big miss, I think that Pogba brought the best out in Lukaku, and Lukaku brought the best out in Pogba. So all of a sudden, Pogba started the season. Some of the goals he scored were actually from outside the area. So Lukaku was always stretching the opposition. That created that space, and Pogba was getting into that. Manchester United haven't got that player now that can go through the gears, starting deep and then going into joining, and that took the pressure off Lukaku. Whereas Lukaku now, I think he's starting to come a little bit deeper at times when you actually want him to be stretching the game himself. But Ibrahimovic, yeah, when he gets fit, then it just gives you, it's a different option for Manchester United and Mourinho, and what 2 different options it is to have as well, because 2 excellent centre forwards, but 2 very different ones.
Well, Nemanja Matic returned to the bridge on Sunday, and Jose Mourinho expressed his surprise at his availability in the summer.
I was surprised. when his agent called me to say, "Do you want him?" I was surprised, but he's an agent that I know well, and normally is very direct, very objective. He doesn't lose time. He doesn't try people to be interested in his players, to improve the players' situation in his club. Normally he's really straightforward on that. So when he told me, "You can have if you want," of course I want.
Well, Matic has been a key player for Manchester United. He was a key player for Chelsea. Are you as surprised as Jose was that he first and foremost is available? Secondly, he's now at Manchester United.
Amazed, absolutely amazed. I think what Chelsea did, was two things. They weakened themselves and they made one of their competitors stronger, which is something that, you know...
It smacks of the Robin Van Persie situation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Moving and winning the league.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the thing is, when you look at, obviously, Bakayoko's come in and he might have found himself in a position, Conte at Chelsea, where it was, you have one or the other. And he's probably said, right, Matic go. Matic has been sublime for Manchester United, because what he does, I think he's that good a player, not just as an individual player, but the key to it is, when I look at the top-class players, do they bring the best out in players around them? And that's exactly what he does. He gives players the freedom.
So he's a facilitator, if you like.
Exactly, yeah. So he does his part, but by him doing his part, he brings the best out in the other players. Pogba was able to be sensational with Matic in the team, because it took the defensive side away from Pogba. You know, always defending with a four, Matic, the two centre-backs and one of the full-backs, means that the other players can go forward and express themselves. And then Matic as well, we've seen on a few occasions, he's not frightened of getting forward as well, and he's been an unbelievable signing. And the Chelsea supporters must be thinking to themselves, how did we let him go to not just leave, but to actually go to one of the competitors?
Paul, that's going to be the most surprising thing, because it almost seemed there was no coercing by Jose. There was no real fight seemingly put up by Chelsea. Does that say more about Chelsea than it does about Manchester United's way of getting players on board?
I don't know how Man United work, but what he said about Matic, I mean, you know, he's got a phone call. I mean, I bet he couldn't believe his luck. He must have thought it was a wind-up. He must have. I mean, you're talking one of the best holding midfield players in Europe. I mean, you know, Chelsea won the league last year on the back of Kante and Matic. You know, you only got to look now. Kante's not is injured. Matic is not there. Chelsea are all over the place. They're all over the place. They let him freeze here, freeze there. That ain't Chelsea. I mean, last season you scored against Chelsea, and that was, you know, it was like you worked for your goals, and now they're giving them away for fun. And you know, it surprises me. It shocked me. It really did.
But so does this now mark Chelsea out as a different proposition to last season? Are we seeing an Antonio Conte that's under more pressure? Are we seeing a team that is nowhere near as formidable as it was because they seem to have weakened themselves, as you said, Dan?
Yeah, I think I'm a massive fan of Fabregas. I think Fabregas on the ball's as good as anybody in the Premier League. The way he can spray a ball round, he can open defences up. When Chelsea haven't got the ball, he becomes a little bit of a liability for me. I know it's not a nice word because he is a great player, but without the ball, Chelsea are a different team. They remind me at the moment a bit like an Arsenal when they haven't got the ball. Because I look around...
Disinterested, if you
like?
like?
No, not disinterested. I look and I think, who's going to get the ball back? There's no one can get the ball back now. You know, Babiak, he's come in and he's not... I don't think he's hit the ground running at the moment. I think it's a little bit different for him. This is a different league. And I look around, you know, Hazard's not going to get you the ball back. Pedro's not going to get you the ball back. Morata don't get you the ball back. You know, Fabregas don't get you the ball back. You know, so straight away you're playing with 5-6 players, and the back three that looked Ashford and Simpson last season, they're all over the place now. They're all over the place, and for me it's worrying for Chelsea at the moment. This is really worrying, and you know and they're the only ones to blame, and that's the worst thing about it. You know, if his contract was up, like Sanchez is coming up, and Ozil's, and Chelsea and Arsenal don't start well next season. You can go, oh, you know, his contract run out. You know, they're ringing up Man United asking if you want him.
I think there's...
Are you worried for Conte in that context?
Yeah, I think last season, I think there's two things. Obviously, we've got Champions League football this season, so obviously playing more games. But last season, I think if we sat down on a Friday night, we could probably name the team. They've had injuries this season in key areas, I think Moses, obviously Kante, Hazard at certain times. The biggest problem that they're having at the moment, and for me, Kante is the biggest miss, because the back three are actually now being dragged into areas where they don't want to go. We saw it, I know it's a different situation, but we saw it with Leicester. Centre-half being dragged into areas that they don't want to be. So what you had when Chelsea were at their best last season, even when Leicester won the Premier League, there was the back three or the back four, Kante, then the midfield. So what's happening is now if you've got a 10 dropping off or a centre-forward dropping off, one of the back three is having to go with them. And then that's leaving so much space in behind. They won the game against Watford, but that was what Richarlison did for fun. Getting in behind, using his pace. Whereas last season, you never saw that. There was a structure to the team. Everybody knew exactly what was expected of them. Now it's just, they just seem a little bit lost with Kante. I think Kante this season, all competition, he played 9 games and conceded 8. Without him, played 7 and conceded 13. So that tells you a lot in itself. It's that defensive stability that they've actually lost with Kante not being in the team at the moment. They'll be desperate to get him.
Do you think injuries will catch him up because of the amount of work he does? I mean, over the last few years, I don't think anybody's run like he has.
No,
and he gets everywhere. He's not he don't run just anywhere. But when he goes, he always. It's very rare he doesn't win the ball when he goes.
Economy of
you know what I mean? He very rarely goes, and people go bang bang, and you go, well, where's he gone?
I think the problem is that you have. I'm sure you had it, Paul, where you played in certain teams where if it wasn't a so-called big game, you could afford to rest a couple of players. But with Kante, because he's so important, if he's fit, more often than not, he's going to be playing because he's the catalyst of that team. No one can do what he does. Bakayoko wants to get a bit further forward. Obviously, Fabregas, he can dictate from deep, but you don't want him as your holding midfielder. You want him to be able to go forward and express himself. And they've massively missed him.